Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So if you've been watching my channel for a couple of days now, you've probably seen that I'm very miserable about a specific character called Cyrene from honkaistarrail. And I thought it would be nice to de-stress for a while and check what's going on that's actually funny related to Cyrene. Now, the CyreneMains has been set on fire because of Cyrene the character herself, her kit, and a couple of things. So, before we get into this, we need to give like an explanation to really understand the scope of why this is such a big piece of drama that CyreneMains has turned into whatever this monstrosity is, right? So first, who is Cyrene, right? So it all comes back to this game from like 10 years ago called Honkai Impact 3rd. One of the characters there is named Elysia, which looks one-to-one with the Cyrene that we have right now. Like, this is no joke. She's one-to-one with Elysia from Honkai Impact 3rd. And Elysia was very beloved, actually. She was one of the most popular characters from that game, just because of her character, you know, how she looks, and anybody that's played the game of Honkai Impact 3rd generally likes Elysia and, you know, would like to see her in future Hoyoverse games. And so, when a teaser came out for 3.0 with the new region Amphorius in honkaistarrail, people saw a smaller version of Elysia called Cyrene, and people were really hyped about it because, again, Elysia is a very popular character, and seeing as she is like some sort of main character in this new world means that she's gonna be a very hype broken character that people are gonna pull for and people are gonna love in the story, which is nice, right? People are happy that they see Elysia is back after, you know, not appearing in very major content or in the mainstream, basically. So people are happy that, you know, Elysia was teased and we're gonna go into Amphorius and meet her. And as the story went on, you could see Cyrene being more and more involved with the plot, and people are falling in love with her more and more. Not even just if you're a Honkai Impact 3rd player, but if you were an HSR player, like I was, like I didn't play Honkai Impact 3rd, I actually really liked Cyrene because of her involvement in the story, how she acts, and, you know, the fact that she's mem is hilarious enough. Like, you see that pink money? Yeah, that is just her. That is her under, like, her different form where she doesn't have her memories. So I really liked Cyrene, and I think a lot of people also shared that sentiment with how the way she's acted in the story. And so because of that, you no longer have only Honkai Impact 3rd Elysia fans clamoring for her debut, but also some people like me that really like her are really excited to see when she's gonna come out because, you know, they actually liked her from the story. So people are asking, when is Cyrene? When is Cyrene? What's Cyrene gonna do? And it took like 7 patches, but we're finally here to the point that, yes, Elysia herself was drip marketed. So now people are at their ultra fever pitch. This was before V1, and her V1 is gonna release, and we're gonna see how good she really was. So, let's talk about her V1. I've already made an entire video about Cyrene's V1, so I'm only going to give you the rundown of it. Cyrene is a character that works unlike any other character we've seen before. She is a character that outright names who she is the best with. honkaistarrail is known for very deliberate pairings that usually do not say their name. Like, let's say Hysealence is a DOT character, right? And Kafka is a damage over time enabler, and nobody else replaces her. So it's very blatant that Hysealence is made to be used with Kafka. But Kafka doesn't outright name Hysealence as a benefactor. Cyrene does. Cyrene outright names who she has a special buff for, which is completely new in honkaistarrail, and for many other gacha game players, this is probably like something that is so ludicrous, and you're right, it is a very ludicrous gimmick to add to this game. Now, because of how restrictive she is, Cyrene doesn't work well in other teams. She's barely even like a character outside of those teams. Like, she's usable only because her numbers are big, but in the future, nobody has hope that Cyrene is gonna work outside of her teams that she outright named who the party members of. This is because of her ultimate. Her ultimate is the slowest charging ultimate in the game, bar none. There's no other character that can charge her ultimate that fast. And the only people that can charge her ultimate that fast are those specific characters she names, but more effectively a smaller version, a smaller subset of those people that she already named. Like, for example, in this cast of 12 Chrysos heirs, as you know we like to call them, only really 4 of them really charge Cyrene's ult to be actually fast and not have to take up an entire cycle and waste a lot of score. And because of her weird kit and because of how bad her future looks, because she only works with 12 characters that are probably gonna get progressively weaker as more stronger characters come out, there was a bit of agenda posting. The biggest amount of comparisons that I've seen was comparing her to Tribby. Tribby is a very universal support and works with practically anybody, and is no doubt one of the most broken characters in the game, especially her E1 form, which if you get a copy of Tribby, that means you basically won the game in most forms of endgame content. There was also some light comparisons with Cyrene to another character called Ceridra. Now, if you didn't know who Ceridra is, I already made a video about her, but the basic rundown of Ceridra is, the problem with Ceridra was that she was kind of a niche character because she only worked with skill spamming attack scalers, which a grand total of 2 characters really fits her gimmick, and even those that even those characters that were skill spamming attack scalers, they oftentimes had a very clunky synergy with her, like Herta was not a perfect synergy. So the fact that Cyrene is being compared to the most general support, which is the bar for supports nowadays, and also Ceridra, the most niche unit in the game, means that the agenda posting was very much in heavy effect, and some of it was pretty bad faith, but it was mostly just joking. Because the thing is that this amount of drama only came from V1. Now V1, if you guys didn't know how acheron's leak system works, Hoyoverse puts out a beta for characters they're gonna release in the next version. They would start with V1, the next week they do V2, V3, until usually V5. Sometimes they do a V6, sometimes they don't. And the biggest changes usually happen in V3 and V5. There's a very rare amount of characters that made it through the entire beta cycle without any changes, so people were hopeful that, you know, this kit that looks pretty sus future-wise and doesn't look very equal in its buffing is gonna be better later on. Just as a sidetrack here, because I feel like it's important because you've been staring at it this entire time, this character is called Lygus, and CyreneMains have made this meme called Lyrene. Now, Lyrene is a combination of Cyrene and Lygus. Cyrene, as we've established, is a lovable protagonist, and Lygus is a antagonist. He's actually a very evil son of a bitch, this guy is. And so combining them together was absolute comedy. The origin of it specifically was an edit from a Chinese video in which Lygus just replaced Cyrene's cutscene and showed up with Cyrene's clothes, and it's just an utterly horrifying video. It was also dubbed by, I believe, the Chinese voice actor for Lygus, and it was dubbed later on, and a few days later, by the English voice actor for Lygus. So you can imagine that this was kind of like a stamp of approval that this is a funny as hell meme that you can talk about everywhere.
Of course. This would be a romantic allegory like none that has been told before. You think so too, right?
So don't think of the Lyrene meme as like something that came out of doomposting, because it happened before V1 actually, and it just kind of got sucked into this gimmick, and it's just a funny, horrifying thing that people can look at and be like, oh my god, this is so cursed, JPEG or Reddit reaction kind of thing, right? Overall, V1 was a disaster. But people were hopeful for the next weeks because, you know, again, V1 doesn't have the best kits in the world and they keep changing it for like 5 versions. So let's wait for V2. So V2, what V2 had was a wording changes. Yep, nothing. Just wording changes to her kit. Which is fine, because V2 is usually that. V2 doesn't have big changes, only V3. So then, people waited for another week to see what V3 has in store for them. And people were very excited. Like, what is gonna happen with Cyrene's kit at V3? Her V1 was a disaster. Let's see what's going on. So here's what happened. The V3 was delayed due to a Chinese holiday, which is Golden Week for them. Which means for a week, the employees were not at work. And so it was delayed for up to 5 days, and people were left to fester, and there was a mix of... There was a lot of fear, like, you know, anxiety, worry, and anticipation in this subreddit for what's gonna happen with Cyrene's V3 while that delay was going on. And V3 released. And guess what? Even though Cyrene got buffed, people were not happy. her ultimate stacking was not fixed at all, and they just made her shill the strongest team in the game further and further. And people were really mad that it took them 2 weeks to do this, and it's still not a good enough a fix. Like, her biggest flaw still hasn't been fixed. Hoyo is clearly wanting to run this gimmick of a unit that takes their ult so long to build up in a game where it's actively being punished. And the result of all of this is the MOC's HP inflation being increased. Because of this entire V3 debacle of why the fuck is Cyrene still slowly charging her ult and takes like 1 cycle to do it, when every other character takes like, I don't know, half or even a quarter of a cycle, people started agenda posting really, really heavily. Because V3 is supposed to be the big game changer beta version, but they didn't change a lot actually. They changed possibly the most inconsequential parts of Cyrene's kit. And so the memes started to ramp up, and people started to actually notice CyreneMains being absolutely deranged at what's happening to their favorite character. But it's fine, right? Even with the agenda posting, that's gonna be aging out really badly soon. Because we're still at V3, we still have V4 and V5 to go through. V4 released a few days later just to make up for the delay, and it was good, I guess. There was minor buffs to the Castress team, which is her best team, and she gave a buff to Mighty, which is considered the worst Chrysosaur because he didn't get a lot of good buffers. So, you know, people weren't satisfied, but it's fine. You know, they didn't change her ult charging of how slow it is, and they're clearly being very adamant about this ult charging. But it's fine. This is only V4, and usually the big changes are in V5. Well, people soon realized there was no V5. This is how Cyrene is gonna come out. This is the HP inflation we're gonna get, and like you can see all of the memes here with you weren't strong Cyrene, and it's just an agenda post from JJK. What is this, man? And then you had this post where Cyrene is being kidnapped by Lygus. You had this post where, you know, Tribi and Sunday already have their ultimates active, and just Cyrene's there. Guys, hold on a sec. And this meme. Okay, so let me explain this one. This is a call to action to the Chinese community. Because, as you see with the previous post right here, what happened after the beta was that the Chinese testers were so mad about Cyrene's power level and flaws that Hoyo just decided to mute all of them. And that's a really funny thing to do, because if you didn't know what the Chinese community does in the Hoyoverse games, you have to look at like some video to recap all of their exploits. But to give you like a quick summary of what the Chinese community of Hoyoverse does, their actions can range from review bombing a game, which is pretty typical, it happens in global servers too, to doxing Hoyoverse employees, which we don't do, and it also ranged to reporting Hoyoverse themselves to the Chinese government and forcing them to censor a couple of things in their games. Yeah, I don't think muting the Chinese community is a very good tactic, Hoyoverse, but I don't know. I don't know what to do with situations like these, to be honest. And the reason for this change of aesthetic for CyreneMains is calling for the Chinese community to save Cyrene because they have a lot of power. Because Hoyo is a lot more, I guess, let's say, motivated to quell out the outrage in the CN community than the global community. Which, you know, to be fair, with the exploits of the Chinese community, I would not blame them. I would probably, and if I was a Hoyoverse developer, I probably would be paying attention more to my community that can dox me at any moment if they chose it to be appropriate. So again, just looking at the memes here, you got the comparison to Jiao Cho, as I've explained in a previous video. Jiao Cho and Acheron. Jiao Cho, one of the most niche supports for Acheron, is being compared to Cyrene. Yeah, Cyridra getting apologies because apparently she wasn't the most niche support. Because at least Cyridra looks like she's gonna have a future in like a year from now. And try not to laugh challenge with Cyrene's V4 kit, and just still a bunch of fan art. What the what the hell is this, bro? Real. Somebody's drinking water got sacrificed to make this video of AI. By the way, yeah, it's What the hell? What the hell is going on, man? I think if I were to compare this to... Wow, what the hell is this? I think if I were to compare this to the Acheron drama, the thing about the Acheron drama was that it's very isolated to Acheron and Zhao Cho pullers. The rest of the community was kind of just looking at it and not really caring, like, haha, look at the unhinged things going on in CyreneMains, this is so funny. And mostly the people that were participating in the agenda posting were just having fun, you know, seeing what's going on. They weren't really being serious about it. Like, nobody really cared if Zhao Cho was power crept by a cipher. Who cares? Because, to be honest, we're just here for the shit posting, right? I think overall, compared to the CyreneMains situation where people were generally just goofing and having fun with this, but not really caring about the end result, people actually cared about the end results of this. And I think nobody that cares about the meta ended up being happy with Cyrene's kit. If you were a Cyrene puller, you would think she's underpowered and you would want her to be more universal so she could actually be used in like 6 months from now. If you were a Cyrene skipper, you were really mad that this unit is actually have some sort of strength for the strongest team in the game and bringing a generational amount of HP inflation. So nobody, and I mean nobody, was really happy about Cyrene's kit. At most, people were indifferent and were laughing at it, but really, the only people that won with this beta are the agenda posters that live off the chaos and the internet cloud of making funny memes, which, you know, all power to you, you're just trying to have fun. A slay queen, I suppose. This is probably the most Doom post filled beta I've ever seen. And yeah, that's the entire CyreneMains drama and why they are like this now. Again, if I were to evaluate Cyrene with no biases, everything that I've been saying is not my personal opinion. It's just the general consensus of the people. So if I was gonna pitch in with what actually Cyrene is to me, Cyrene I feel like is a strong character for the strongest characters in the game. The thing that pisses me off about Cyrene is that she doesn't buff characters equally. Like, weaker characters in Amphorius don't get buffed as much by Cyrene, but she does buff the strongest characters in the game, which incentivizes power creep. So to me, I really care about the fact that Cyrene is strong for the best team in the game, that she's bringing HP inflation. And also, I feel like the Doom posting has gone a little out of hand for Cyrene, because she is undoubtedly an upgrade for her best team of a Castress team. I think people are downplaying her effectiveness to that team a lot, because Tribi has a lot of failings in single target, which Cyrene is a big upgrade for, and people are comparing Cyrene at E0 to Tribi's E1. Tribi E1 is like the biggest power jumps in the game. So just the fact that you're comparing a character at E0 to someone at E1 is already a compliment to that character at E0. And so I think people are going way too far with the Doom posting of Cyrene's, you know, power with Castress teams. But I think otherwise, you know, the Doom posting about her future, the Doom posting about how good she is outside of those Chrysos Air team of Castress, and just her general power level outside of the Castress team, I fully agree. My personal opinion of this character overall is that she's a character that feels bad to play because of how slow she is. She's a character that's bad to pull because of her future, or feels bad to pull at least because of her future, and she's a character that feels bad discussing about because she brought in a new level of HP inflation. And yeah, this is undoubtedly, that's it, right? That's the entire CyreneMains drama, and in general the Cyrene drama. This is one of the most miserable betas in honkaistarrail's history, and this subreddit is a really good example of what happens to the player base when they get pushed off the edge. This is a generational level of beta misery that will probably never be seen after. And yeah, I hope it really doesn't, but yeah, that's it for the entire video. Do all the algorithm stuff, and surely the next beta isn't gonna be this miserable, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!